Welcome back. So I'm going to go through these pretty fast now. I want you guys to pause at certain times though and just see if you can do it on your own. So right off the bat, this one says, so solve this for V. And remember this AC, that's just one variable, right? That just stands for centripetal acceleration. We'll talk about it later. So we want to solve for V. So I'm going to let you guys pause it right now. So pause it now and solve for V. Okay, so now take a minute to check to see if you got the same answer that I did here, that V is equal to the square root of R times AC. All right, moving on to the next one. So 4, let's try FC, centripetal force is what that stands for, is equal to mass times velocity squared over R squared. All right, and then let's solve for V in this one too. Okay, so take a second now again, pause it, see if you can solve for V on your own. All right, so check to see that you got V is equal to the square root of R times FC divided by M. And make sure that you can kind of follow what I've done up here if you really can't. It does really matter in physics how you show your work, right? So if you just like did it all in your head and got this, you know, I want to be able to see, and your teacher needs to be able to see how you got there. That's a big part of physics and a big part of math, right? So make sure that you've got something similar to what I have going down like this, not to the right. All right, moving on to number 5. Okay, let's do this one. So take a minute to pause and catch up if you need to. So if I was going to solve for G here, I'm just going to rewrite it again here to the right so we can work our way down like we've been doing. All right, so this one might look a little bit confusing. It's not too bad though. All we got to do is we're looking for G, right? So that's our goal. So we want to get G on its own. We're just going to start getting stuff away for this thing just one at a time. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, so could I get rid of the L? No, I can't really get rid of the L yet because you can think about it as being like locked up underneath this square root symbol. So what we got to do first is get everything else to the other side of the equation and then deal with the square root. So what I mean by that is we got to get rid of this 2 pi first, and we can take them both together. So we'll go 2 divided by pi on both sides. So they cancel on that side. So what we have left is t divided by 2 pi is equal to the square root of L divided by G. And you might be saying, okay, now let's get rid of the L or something like that, right? But what we got to do first is we need to get rid of the square root symbol. And the way we do that, just like before, we need to square. I guess it's not just like before. Before we had a square and square rooted it. But we have to do the opposite. So we had a square root. We need to square both sides. So if we do that, remember that a square and a square root, they cancel each other out. So this square and that square root symbol over here, they both disappear now. And what we have left is just t over 2 pi squared is equal to L over G. And now this is getting a little bit easier to deal with, right? One more thing I'm going to do, just because this seems to confuse people too, or they kind of forget. I know they've learned this in math before, but this squared, when it's in brackets like this, we squared everything. That means everything inside the brackets is going to be squared, all 3 of those things. So I'm just going to rewrite it like that. So I'm going to rewrite this as t squared over 2 squared is 4, and then pi squared is what we have left. Okay, that is equal to L over G. Okay, now you might be asking or saying like, okay, now I don't know what to do with G because it's in the denominator, right? It's in the bottom. I don't want it in the bottom. It needs to be in the top when I get it on its own, right? So what I'm going to do now is I need to get G out of the denominator. The only way I can do that is by multiplying both sides of the equation by G, kind of like we've done before, right? So multiply that side by G and that side by G. Oh, actually, that wouldn't cancel though. That would just be G up there. But I'm just going to give you guys a new way of kind of thinking about this that makes things a lot quicker. Really, in this case, what we can do, since we're not like subtracting or adding anything from this becomes really straightforward. All you need to do is you can move things diagonally. So what I mean by that is if something's on the bottom of this side of the equation, you can just move it diagonally to the top of that side of the equation. So g would just go up to the top. Really what I'm doing is I'm multiplying both sides of the equation by g, but to make things quicker and easier, you're just moving g up to the top. Same with this t squared. It's on the top of this side of the equation, so it can just move to the bottom of that side of the equation. So here, I'll show you what I mean there. So if you kind of clean this up a bit, I'm going to move g up to that side. So this just becomes g times t squared over 4 pi squared is equal to L. Now, really all I got to do is start moving stuff. So I can just move 4 pi squared, that's in the bottom of this side. I can just move it on up here. It can just move diagonally up to the top of that side. T squared, that's just going to be able to move down to the bottom of that side. Really, all I'm doing is the same thing I've been doing this whole time. This is just a little shortcut that you can use to do things quicker. So if I clean that all up and actually move those things, what I'm left with is g is equal to, the L is still there, so L. I move the 4 pi squared up here, so that's 4 pi squared. And then divided by, or over, now I move that t squared to the bottom. And that's it. That's my answer. So again, I'm going to give you just one more way though to think about this. So if I looked at this from this point, let's say that you wanted to solve for that. The other thing you can do, again, if you're not subtracting or adding anything from like the end of it, is you're allowed to just flip these things upside down. So put the g up on top, as long as you do the same to the other side. So I can flip this side of the equation as long as I flip that side of the equation. So that's the other way of going about it. So you could do that, and then g's on the top, and then it's quite easy to get g on its own after that step. So try that if you want, or do the way that we did down here. I just wanted to give you guys a couple of options because algebra is kind of a individual thing. Okay, moving on. Now I'd like you guys to go ahead and do 6, 7, and 8 on your own. I'm having you solve for r in each one of these. It was just by chance. It was r there. I just think r is the hardest for each one of those. So yeah, go ahead and do that. You guys can just pause it, write these all down, give it a try, and then I'm going to pop the answers up in here in a second. So go ahead and pause it now. Okay, here's the answers for this one. Hopefully you ended up with something similar or exactly the same. Remember, it doesn't matter what side the r was on. You could have had r on the right side of the equation in the end. This one, I just want to make sure number 8 went okay for everybody. Notice that this is a cube root, and the reason for that is because I had r to the power of 3 when I was solving for it, so I rearranged everything so I had r to the power of 3 on its own. And then the last step would just be taking the cube root, because cube root is the opposite of cubing something. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Make sure that you guys have a good, I've already told you a couple times, make sure you guys have a good grasp on this stuff. If you don't, there's lots of great YouTube videos online too. Khan Academy does a bunch. Make sure that you've got this. It'll make life a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to end that video there, and I'll see you guys later.